Lesner, and I'm the director of the Museum of the American Military Family, and our museum's collaborative has done a series of roundtables over the summer dealing with mental health and timely topics. And this is our third roundtable. And today it is called Pandemic Schooling, Strategies for Coping and Succeeding. And I know this is a really hot topic right now, and I know parents are struggling. So I just wanted to go around and introduce everyone. And up at the top is Natalie Williamson. She's a school psychologist at Albuquerque Public Schools. And Sunny Olson, who is here, also is a school psychologist for Albuquerque Public Schools, and she also teaches at UNM. And Jennifer Sacco, is that how you pronounce it? Very good.
Sacco. Yeah.
The Special Projects Coordinator for Bernalillo County Department of Behavioral Health. And Cherie Avila is a math teacher and a tutor in Brevard County in Florida. And once again, Evan Gonzalez is providing our technical support for this roundtable. And so I just wanted to welcome you. I'm excited about this topic. So let's just jump into the first question. So many students are finding themselves beginning the new school year just like they ended the last year, online or in some sort of flux. For teachers, parents, and students, it must be really disheartening. And so I just wanted to ask, what are you guys seeing? Some of you are parents with kids, and I'd like to know how your kids are dealing with this. And then some of you are teachers. What are you seeing, and how are the kids doing with this new normal? So Natalie, you want to start? We'll go kind of around the corner.
Yeah. So I know for my own children, fortunately, they seem to be adapting to the online system all right. But as far as the socialization, that's been really a major struggle for them. They are socializing, electronically, primarily electronically. But obviously that's not the same as in-person interaction. So from the parental perspective and just seeing what my own children are going through, that's what they're going through. Now, as far as professionally, I primarily work with the children and the adolescents that are in the special education department. And so what we're really seeing with a lot of our special ed students is they just are not able to manage the online. They just can't do it. Their parents are really, really struggling. They are literally the examples of having to literally put their work to the side and literally get online with their children to get them to do it. And even then, they cannot get them to log on, or these children are really struggling with, having crying fits and, arguing and just not doing well at all, not doing any of the work, not turning it in, just really struggling with that. So I think there's different levels and different degrees, and it's different for all developmental ages.
Well, I think we're going to try to come up with some strategies to help parents here. So Jennifer, you have kids too, right?
Yes. I have 5 kids at home. So I run the gamut of various different types of school. And I agree, personally, the kids are definitely struggling to do schooling. They're struggling, I think, a little bit socially. And we'll talk more later, it sounds like, about strategies. But we've built some things into our daily lives and our schedules to kind of help with that. On the professional side, what we see and what I hear from our community-based providers is that they're really struggling with their clients, with young adults, teenage youth, all the way to, young children, and families are really struggling. We fund a lot of case management services through the county. And so a lot of those case management services are now being dedicated to things that are around school, around schedules, around building capacity for those things. We're really, and then of course addressing, some of the most basic fundamental needs of families food and transportation and those kinds of things. So it is hard. There's a lot of struggle.
Sunny, are you able to hear us now? And what are you seeing?
So my husband and I were not parents. However, we do have our niece and nephew who are doing remote learning, actually up in Washington. And my nephew, he just turned 9 years old, and my niece, she's 6, and been talking with them to see how they've been doing through this whole new schooling piece. And my niece, she's doing just fine with it. And my nephew, however, has been having a lot of difficulty with the remote learning. And as Natalie had just mentioned, those in special education, most are having some difficulty adapting. My nephew is actually diagnosed with autism, and autism, for those that do not know what it is, it's a neurodevelopmental disorder that affects nonverbal and verbal communication with social communication. There can be repetitive, restricted behaviors, interests, and routine is so key to helping them succeed. And as we can imagine, and we've all gone through this for these last couple months with the pandemic, is nothing is routine anymore. Nothing is normal. And that adaptive piece to the remote learning day by day, and with technology glitches here and there and what have you, it can be very challenging. And when I'm talking to my sister-in-law and how he's doing, this is where we're seeing him starting to shut down. And I've also heard from, on the professional side too, other students, they're also starting to develop some anxiety that wasn't present until now. And a lot of this, we're probably going to get into in a little bit for strategies and coping with this, but a lot of this are normal responses to what's happening in the world.
Right. So Cherie, you're in Brevard County, Florida, and you are a math teacher and a tutor, and you have your own tutoring business. What are you seeing in Florida?
It sounds very similar. In the county I live in, the parents have been given the choice to go in school or online. They have e-learning. So all the teachers have cameras in their classrooms, so that if a kid comes and goes, it's the idea is that there's continuity. If that kid has to leave the classroom, they can come back in. So I don't know if they're doing something similar in Albuquerque or not. What I'm seeing is, even from the tutoring perspective, is the kids, the distraction is they're just having trouble focusing. Even so I used to tutor in person before this happened. Now I'm 100% online. I've been that way since March. But the other day I was watching a kid and I was talking, I'd ask him a question. Every time I'd ask him a question, I would notice that his eyes would move and go like this. And then he would, there'd be a pause, and then he'd say, "What did you say?" And I was like, what the heck is going, so I just kind of was watching him say, and so what he was doing, he had 2 computers. He was doing something else on another computer while his mom was paying me a lot of money to tutor him. And I was just like, you have got to shut that computer down. And the thing is, the parents work, and the mom had, a lot of times she's in the house when I'm working with their son, but this time she wasn't, and the kid was just taking full advantage. And I don't know, I was just shocked that was happening. And then I'm seeing a lot of distraction, is the kids just being at home in this environment. They're having a lot of difficulty focusing on whatever was trying to be coming across. So that, to me, that's the biggest thing here.
So we know that schooling is handled differently from state to state, and even between districts and individual schools. Is that how it's being done in New Mexico? Each school is kind of deciding how it's going to handle this?
Yeah. Actually, there are some elementary schools right now that are actually already doing the hybrid model. And some of them, I don't even feel like it's hybrid. It's almost like full time. There are some schools that are going to school now in person, 4 times a week from 9 to 4. And then you've got other schools that are still 100% online. And then there's some that are only going maybe 2 times a week, half half a day. So they're all doing kind of all their own individualized, work. So it's really difficult to say.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if you have kids that are going to different schools, it must be really complicated. If you've got one kid that's, my mind boggles every time I think about how you would adjust, to two high schoolers, a junior high student or a middle schooler, and then elementary kids all in the same house. Jennifer, are your kids spread out like that?
They are. It's pretty crazy. And we've had a pretty crazy journey through COVID school and homeschool. So we have a high schooler, and none of the high schoolers in our state are in person yet. So she's doing online school. We have 2 middle schoolers, and then we have an elementary schooler. And I was so glad Sunny was talking about her nephew. I also have a son that has some very specific learning disabilities, has a very difficult time with online school. And then I have a 3-year-old. So we have all kinds of different schedules and different things going on. We've made a decision to homeschool 2 of our children because the online schooling that was offered for them just wasn't going to meet their needs. And so we have 2 being homeschooled, one doing a online academy and another doing an online high school with a charter high school, and a 3-year-old that's, we're working on getting dressed.
Wow. So I read an article recently in the Wall Street Journal that the article was called "Disagreements About School During COVID Are Straining Families and Friends." And some of the examples are that one parent wants their child to go to school in person, the other one wants the child to homeschool. Some won't let their kids socialize with other kids outside of bubbles. It's causing strain. Some families are saying that they can't afford to homeschool. They have to send their kids to school, and there's guilt. And then also some people have to quit their jobs because they have children that have, health problems that would make it dangerous to go. So how can families come up with solutions if they're on opposite sides of the spectrum? Like my husband says, send them off to school, and I say, no, I want to keep them home. How can we, or family members, other family members telling you what to do? How can families come up with win-win situations if they're on opposite ends of the spectrum? Any thoughts?
Well, this is a really important question that comes up, and it ultimately comes down to a decision-making question and a very tough parenting decision at that as well. And the thing to be mindful of is parents have the responsibility and authority to make educational and even medical decisions for their children. And it's important not to make these decisions based off emotions, especially if you're in heated or emotional moments. And I know that might be very easier to say than do, especially during a pandemic and a time of civil rights movements as well, where emotional responses are saturating our decision making. So it's important when we're looking at these decisions to have proper planning in place for them. Give yourself adequate time to process the information, and also analyze up-to-date data from reliable sources as well. But don't overwhelm yourself with all the new information that's coming out. Make sure that's limited, but do that analysis and develop possible solutions, weighing out some of the pros and cons to each solution. And this is where communication with your spouse, your partner, your extended family members, or people you trust to have these kind of decisions as well. And usually it can be really helpful to write down like a list of pros and cons for each one and just really visualize it and look at it together. And it's just really important to know that whichever decision you make for this, nothing's going to be perfect. There's no one size fits all either.
Anyone else have a thought or any sort of ideas about this particular issue? Differences of how to school. I would like to know how you're dealing with multiple schedules. What are some good ideas for dealing with, like what you said, 2 homeschooling, 1 is online, 1 is sort of going,
Yeah. I really appreciated. Yeah, I really appreciated what Sunny said. I think we've had to do kind of a lot of trial and error to see what works and what doesn't work. And so we've kind of gone through these processes of seeing what would work for our special needs kiddos versus some of our kiddos that can work more independently. And so we've kind of slowly just figured out what's working for everybody. And that's kind of built back our schedule and how we sort of orchestrate our days. But we do kind of stick to some tenets that I've heard other psychologists say, get up in the morning, take a shower, brush your teeth, make your bed. We really try to stick to some of those traditional things and build some schedules in our day. We have a rule like you have to have breakfast by 8:30 and the kitchen is closed, because otherwise we're eating and we're not doing school. So those kinds of things have really helped to standardize our day. And then our kids that are already somewhat independent, we're encouraging them to be more independent and take as much ownership as possible for their education. And then our kids that need more support, we're really trying to lean in, provide that support, but also build skills around working independently, setting their own individual goals, and working through those kinds of things. But it's tricky, and some days are bad, and you're going to have bad COVID days. That's what I say. And some days are great, and we have great days, and we get to do really fun stuff, and we learn really fun things too. So.
What else? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'm a real advocate for school planners for the kids. I know that, I don't know if you guys do again in Albuquerque, but I know in Brevard County, when you register, you get handed a school, every kid gets issued a school planner for their assignments. So I think that it's still important, even if they're home, they're still doing a school planner and they're having what assignments are due when. And then a parent, poor Jennifer, should have like a master planner, and like maybe multiple colors on, so you take each kid's school planner and kind of put it into one master planner, just have an overall view. You could see what's due when and who needs to be where and when and how to use your limited resources to make all this happen. But, and I think it also gives the kids, I kind of got it from what you're saying, Jennifer, about individual responsibility. The kids at some point have to take responsibility for their own education, and I know that's something I struggle with tutoring kids, that they always want to say, oh, the teacher said this or the teacher said that. They just want to push their education responsibility to somebody else, and so I think that as parents and educators, we need to try to encourage the kids to. You need to have your planner. You need to write down when this is due. You need to write down this is due. And like Jennifer, in your situation where you have kids say, look, I have to do this big planner, so you've got to do your part so that I'm able to do my part, because I got to oversee all this stuff. And if you don't take responsibility, I can't take responsibility. But somehow get it so that the student takes responsibility for their own learning. And it's not something a teacher's doing to me or a mom's doing to me or a tutor's doing to me. It's something that I'm doing for the betterment of myself.
Well, that brings me right into the next point. So, Natalie, I'll let you come back. But, it sounds to me like if a parent is working from home, it's a lot easier to say, go get your planner and, let's make sure you're doing it. But so many parents have to work and they're trying to manage their kids while they're at work, or they're not able to, like you said, and they come home and the high school kid has let his little brother sleep through his classes, or they haven't done it. And so how do you keep parents from just totally losing, their tempers about this? But how can they motivate a student to stay on task, to take ownership and want to, and how can they support their kids even though they're remotely, they're remote, they're at work? I mean, to me, it would be like frustrating. I'd be like on the phone calling all the time, and that won't do my job any good, and it doesn't help the kid relationship either.
Well, I think, if it is possible, because not everybody has access to this, I think this, during this COVID time is where we really need to reach out to our extended family members and the the friends around us, to see if that is a possibility. This is where I think, grandparents, aunts, uncles, where their involvement would be really helpful. I know not everybody has that luxury, but, with working parents right now, I think that, that's something that, really needs to be looked at. And also really, as far as motivation, it's really difficult if you're not there to oversee it. You're right. The kid's going to sleep through things, or, maybe watch YouTube videos all morning. Also kind of setting up that environment. I know we've done this in our home, to where there is a designated area where they can, designate to their schooling. And I know what I've done is tried to make it colorful and so, looks fun and inviting and welcoming. So trying to change up that environment as well. So communication, environmental changes, and then, and I think, if it is possible, those check-ins, seriously, so you're not too far off. I mean, I'm sure there's parents want to call in every few minutes to check in on their student, but, definitely doing check-ins, if that is possible with the work schedule, just really, really working together with family and, utilizing any resource that you've got, whether it's your own resources or people around you.
Okay. What other good tips do you have to motivate the kids? I mean, I have heard some kids are like, well, it doesn't matter. We're all in pandemic. Nobody's doing anything anyway, so why should I? So how can you motivate them? This is their future they're creating.
So I think you need to talk about goals. What do you want to do? You're not going to be in this house living under this roof for the rest of your life. So, what are you, I think it gets down to talking to their kids about what are their goals? What do they want to do? I mean, I know it's difficult when they're so young, but by the time they get, to, fifth, sixth grade, I think you can start talking about that and say, you want different things than other people. Maybe other people can do that, but you can't because, you want these things out of your life. The other thing that, about Natalie talking about reaching out, I totally agree with friends, family, reaching out to anyone and find out what their interests and, if they play an instrument or, they speak a foreign language or anything that might be able to help. And, now is the time that we need to form our tribe and get together and find out what are their strengths and weaknesses and how can we come together and pull through. And we have the benefit of technology. So now grandma don't have to be in the house. Grandma can be in a couple states down and she can still, do FaceTime and say, your relatives now have the ability to actually, interact with your kids that we weren't given this opportunity years ago. So I think we have to look on the benefits to it and try to take advantage of the benefits we have because of technology.
So what you're saying is like, if my kid needs to learn French and I don't speak French, but my Aunt Sophie speaks French, Zoom with her or have Aunt Sophie teach the French part.
Absolutely. And find out what you have. Say, look, I don't speak French, but, I know math. You help my kid with French. I'll be very happy to help your kid with your algebra, So, figure out each other's strengths and weaknesses and, say if you can help here, I can help here. And sometimes it's not even the person itself that you're talking about. They'll know somebody that would be willing to, help out.
Well, and I think that also by using your grandparents or using friends, you're helping break the isolation that they're feeling in this pandemic too. I mean, you may have somebody who's shut in and Zooming to help with homework might be a lifesaver for them.
Absolutely.
Else, feeling helpful. I mean, a lot of us feel very helpless right now. Okay, what else? Anybody else have an idea?
I just wanted to share one of the things we're doing is we have a teacher friend down the road, and she actually works for Edgewood Moriarty School District. So she's now working in person, but she has a middle schooler that's at home alone often when dad's at work. And so my high schooler has to do volunteer hours. So she goes down to their house one day a week and works with him on his school, does her school. It's been a really nice sort of community complement. And so I think the more we can find things like that, we've Zoomed too with grandma and had grandma help with, reading to the toddler as long as he'll sit and stuff like that. I think I agree. Those are really great tools.
And thanks for bringing that up as well, because what I've done with my own daughter, my younger one, even though I am here and I'm working and busy and on the computer even right now, so I'm bringing in one of my coworkers from APS. I'm bringing in one of her daughters. She's coming in 1 to 2 times a week, and she's helping my daughter, teaching her and working with her. And it's helping my daughter because it gives her a different perspective. It's not always mom that's overlooking all of her work, and but it's also giving me an opportunity to work. So I found myself reaching out, so bringing in a college student as well to help with my daughter.
Well, that's really cool. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Shifting gears, if someone who is listening today has multiple kids, we're talking about how you can make nice areas for your kids, and you have to work with schedules. How are we getting access to the electronics and supplies the kids need, if especially with finances being so poor,
Mm-hmm.
or if I don't have a computer, how are we helping our students obtain what they need? Are there programs out there? What is the Albuquerque Public School? If you have no Wi-Fi, how can you do, or if you don't have a computer, are they giving iPads or?
I know that it's different for every district, and with Albuquerque Public Schools, they're trying to provide every student a laptop. And I know they're doing that with like the Moriarty Edgewood School District, and they were lucky enough to have Chromebooks for every student prior to COVID because they had a contract with Google prior to. And I have some colleagues that work out there as well. And I was hearing that there's still some trouble reaching some parents who do not have internet connectivity. And this isn't an isolated case. We know this is happening throughout the nation right now, is reaching those families and students that need these laptops, Chromebooks, so they can access either the hybrid remote learning. And what they're having them do is they're doing an all call and sending out emails. And it seems kind of counterintuitive to send an email when they don't have internet, but trying that method. And then that all call, everyone gets a call from the phone. And if they still can't get in contact with these families, they're trying to do some home visits. They're doing certified mail as well, and having them come into the district's central office to help them get equipped.
Cool. What are they doing in Florida? You must be similar.
Yeah, so it sounds very similar. Yeah, the district reached out, and anyone that didn't have a laptop, they actually did it in March, when, or February, whenever it was that they went to all online in Brevard County. And so they had already made sure that all the students had access to the technology. But then you have issues where, there's a technical problem, it's just because they have the Chromebook doesn't mean they can use it, but so yeah, I think Brevard is doing a good job of making sure at least the technology is out there for everyone.
That was one of my things. So, just because you have the iPhone or the iPad or the computer, what if the parents don't feel qualified or comfortable or know how to use it? It must be frustrating for the parents. And, if they're not technologically savvy, maybe even a little guilty or embarrassed. Let's just be honest, I'm terrible in math. So if my kids were homeschooling now and they asked me to help them with math, I'd be humiliated that I can't do, 6th grade math or 8th grade math. What are we telling parents who feel overwhelmed or sad or guilty because they don't understand the technology or the subject or whatever? It's horrible.
I think this is where we really need to, us as professionals, really need to, that work in the education field, really need to reach out to those types of families and parents and really encourage them and let them know that this isn't just them. This is a universal issue. We're not even talking the nation, we're talking the world. And I think, you know, if we can get that message out there more often and more frequently, they'll be more likely to come to us with those issues. Because sometimes, you know, we don't know who they are, or it takes a while to figure that out. So again, I think with this whole situation, communication is really the key to getting that information out there.
Mhm, mhm.
And I really appreciate what you said, Natalie, with that is us as professionals in the education system right now, is not to assume that a parent has all the teaching knowledge and educational background that we do, and be able to reach out using their preferred mode of communication and not just assuming like email or a phone call, anything like that. Maybe even a text can help. But also just normalizing their role as a parent. They are mom, they are dad, stepmom, foster mom, dad, etc. And letting them know, you know, they are the parent and you are the teacher, the school psychologist, the tutor, etc. So just redefining that and normalizing it for them. And because otherwise, I'm bad at math too. And I've had that guilt going into just a classroom observing as a professional and helping a student, and I couldn't figure out second grade math. And I'm like, oh dear, and I'm the professional here. Okay, well, I'm not the math teacher. But again, back to that communication piece and establishing the rapport with the parents.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So, as you know, 2020 has been absolutely chaotic to everybody. It's stressful, and you know, they're talking about people having generalized anxiety and crying jags, and parents were counting on kids to go back to school. And in some cases, they're going back hybrid. And of course, that brings on all more anxiety. And they were hoping things would get back to normal by now. But what self-care tips can we offer to parents who have just had it, or the kids who have just had it? They're having a meltdown. How can we give some self-care tips to people who just, we're done? We're done.
Well, you know, I've started yoga. It's really seemed to help, you know, just relaxate, you know, sometimes, you know, take some part of the day for relaxation, you know, and the importance of sometimes we just have to unplug and recover, you know, from or the bombardment of all the responsibility and the stuff, and we just need to take some time out. So I think emphasizing the importance of, you know, taking care of ourselves, whatever that looks like, in a healthy way, not drinking or anything like that. Something that's, you know, healthy and productive, but time for ourselves.
Yeah, I agree, Cherie. I think it's we've built a lot of things into our day here, so there's some structure. One of the rules I have is that kids go to bed at 8:30. Full stop, no later. So I have time, and also so they are well rested. I'm hearing stories. I heard a teacher on my son's Zoom the other day middle school teachers say, I see some of you doing work at 3 or 4 in the morning. And I'm like, what 12-year-old is doing work at 3 or 4 in the morning? That's crazy. So I think both for kids and parents, those sleep schedules and patterns are really important. And then we try to kind of find something we're doing every week, even if it's going for a walk in the neighborhood, going on a hike, go on a bike ride. I think there's a lot of things you can build into just kind of getting away from the house, go for a drive, to kind of break up the monotony of the days, because the days do run together inevitably. But those are things we do here. We're very lucky to be out here in the East Mountains where we have a lot of space to be outside. But I think there's simple things, like I said, going for walks or, you know, going on a short drive that can really help too.
Right, just getting out of the routine. Yeah.
I think Cherie and Jennifer hit on some important pieces with that routine and structure and the self-care piece. And the thing to take away is like mental health is first and foremost right now. There's social and emotional regulation. If you are becoming anxious, and I say you as either the student, the parent, the educator, you as just an individual, a human, with the demands of remote learning and all the stresses and unknowns of the pandemic, and again, the civil movement going on right now, and it's to the extent that it's negatively impacting your day-to-day functioning, then you really have to step back and reach out to those community supports and family supports, friend supports that you may have. Talk to somebody that is trusted that you may have, and prioritize your social emotional needs first. And said the academics will come later. You can't learn if you're worrying about your safety. And right now, the whole world is going through this feeling of unsafety and trauma. And I'll remember this quote in Albuquerque. We have All Face, which is a center for counseling and helping with trauma. And one of the leads over there that did trauma training, this was a beautiful quote: regulate before you educate.
That's a good tip. Yeah. So it's okay as a parent just to say, you know what, everybody's too frazzled today. We're just going to take today off, and tomorrow you attack school again, but today we're just going to have a down day. That's not I won't feel like a failure as a parent if I say, look, we just can't do it.
That's a really good point to bring up, Cersei. Yeah. I think that parents need to give themselves that break and give their children that break as well. You know, that will not only help foster to maintain the relationship, but also so everybody keeps their sanity, and that is a part of self-care. You know, let's say it's been a really rough week, Monday through Thursday. You know, the world's not going to come crashing down if everybody just doesn't do anything on Friday, if everybody takes the day off. And I've actually done that already. So I did that 2 weeks ago where I said, okay, we're all taking today off. We can't do it. And so I think that's a good point to bring up, that it's okay to do that. It's all right.
Okay. So my last question, and then we'll just, if there's any last thoughts, but as educators, you and your fellow colleagues, all of you signed, you guys have studied and you're teaching and you're working, at school, and you and your fellow colleagues have had to just pivot and teach in ways that you never even imagined, working in situations that you didn't sign up for. And I know I have some teacher friends who are frustrated. They feel like they're not getting the support they need. They're getting screeched at by parents. The policies are changing daily. And some teachers are struggling with guilt, thinking they're not doing a good enough job. And some of them are disengaging already because they're stressed. And others have had colleagues who have died of COVID. So the teachers, I think, are really stressed. And I'm not sure that we are, as a community, are supporting them enough. So what kind of advice can you give to your fellow colleagues or to the community to support a teacher?
Well, I think this goes back to what we were just discussing with self-care, and first and foremost, acknowledging a lot of these feelings of frustration and guilt are very normal right now with what we're going through. And as I briefly mentioned, like, the world is going through a traumatic experience, and what we're feeling now is a grievance process. So that can parallel what we would typically think of when we think of grievance, like the death of a lost one or what have you. But this is more of a grievance of the loss of our pre-COVID day-to-day routines and teaching norms and what we went to school for and knew how to teach this certain way if it wasn't virtual learning, I should say that. But now we've been thrown into a whole unknown. And I struggled with this when I was teaching during the summer at UNM2. We had to do a full course revamp of the syllabus from face-to-face to virtual. And there were some nights where I wasn't sleeping, and there was a lot of feelings of anxiety because I wanted my students to succeed, and they were ready to go out in the world after this course. And I didn't know what world they were going into. So how could I give them the best of what I knew and the best virtual teaching lesson planning? I was running over lesson plans in my head at night. And there were some days of virtual teaching that were great. I slept well those nights, and other ones, not so much. So what really helped with me was, again, reaching out to others to figure out what are some strategies, doing some research on pros and cons and what works, what doesn't work with remote learning versus face-to-face. And after a couple weeks in, what I did was I made a list of 3 things I did well that day and 3 things I needed to make on improvements. And I kept doing this, and I saw that the students were also responding well to this as well. And what I did was an extra credit with them where they had to do that same thing as well. And I know this is at a university level, but for high school, middle schoolers, you can also do this so they can start to reflect on what they did well, whether it's just logging in for the day, they're in attendance. It doesn't have to be anything big. And then what's an area for improvement?
Yeah. No, I had to interrupt. I'm sorry. That was terrible. Sorry, bad.
Okay.
I got excited because that is, it's an assessment, it's a motivation, it's a reward system. Today I went to school. Today I had my homework. Today I didn't, oversleep. I mean, that's already showing accomplishments, and especially if the days are the same every day, to see differences and growth. Cherie, I know you have to go teach, but she has to teach right now. So tell us how you've adjusted, because you used to tutor in person, now you're online. What would you tell colleagues that are struggling with this, or what have you found good about this?
Yeah, I found a lot. I've found a lot good. When they had to come in to me, the parents were stressed, have to take them. The parents had to figure out what to do while I was working with a kid, and now they're just like, "Ooh, this is kind of nice." So I think for me, for what I do normally, that there's lots of advantages and not a lot of disadvantages, except for those few cases where the distraction. That's just the biggest difference I've seen, is the kids are a lot more distractible. So I had a couple thoughts about reaching out to the teachers. Is just, call the teachers and ask them. The big thing I've heard with our discussion is communication. Reach out to, just like you're reaching out to your grandparents or your aunts or your uncles, reach out to the teachers and say, what can I do for you? Can I get you a Starbucks gift card? Can I bake you a cake? Do you want some cookies? What can I do to help and support you so that to make your job a little bit easier? The other thing is, I know that in Brevard Schools, we have Brevard Schools Foundations. We have organizations whose mission is to support teachers, so that would be another thing. Reach out to, I'm sure Albuquerque Public Schools does the same. I actually taught for Albuquerque Public Schools for 15 years, but reach out to the district and say, I want to support the teachers. What can I do? What do you already have in place where I can help reach out to the teachers?
In the local parent-teacher organizations too, would be helpful. So I think what I'm hearing, though, is don't feel guilty, because this is new for everyone. So as a teacher, if you feel like you're not reaching the kids as well as you would in person, be gentle to yourself, because this is new, uncharted territory, right? And we're going to get through it one way or the other, right?
Together.
Together. What last self-care tips, parenting tips, teaching tips do you want to leave our viewers today? Anybody have anything?
Well, Sissy, I should have said this when we were talking about resources, just so we can share with people. So the Albuquerque Public School System, there's homework hotline, and that number is 505-344-3688. 3571. So just to add one more resource to that, so for the parents that aren't around as much, or maybe don't have as much support from family and friends, they can utilize that homework hotline. And then also, I think one thing that we didn't mention was, as far as reaching out, also not only reaching out to the teachers, but reaching out to the school social workers and the school counselors, reaching out to them as well. So if there are issues going on with the students or parents, they can also help to intervene.
And with that in mind, if there is something going on in the home that the child would have been able to tell a teacher privately to get some help, what's happening now with kids that are in a hybrid model? Well, I guess they still see a teacher then, but what if the ones that are online completely? How can they get help if they need help? Is there any mechanism?
Well, again, that would just be, them reaching out to their teachers. I know that most of the teachers are letting their students know that, they're accessible, whether that if they don't want to do it through email, they can do it by phone. They can let the teacher know privately that they need to speak to them, and then the teachers from there can direct them if they feel that it's something that they, aren't equipped to deal with, that they can forward it on to the school social worker or the counselor. As far as I know, that's the way they're handling it now. For the younger ones, it's a little bit more difficult to get that, for them to do that. But at least for 4th, 5th grade on, that's what they're encouraging them to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any last minute thoughts? We have like 3 minutes.
Yeah, this is Jen. I just wanted to add, we also have our statewide in New Mexico. We have our New Mexico Crisis and Access line that individuals can call. It's 1-855-NM-CRISIS. If they are having behavioral health crises, difficulties, they have a warm line. They have a peer line as well. And then on the Bernalillo County.gov website under behavioral health, we have a number of community-based providers that are available and providing behavioral health services. I was really glad to hear Sunny mentioned Allface. They're one of our really strong community-based providers that we currently contract with as well. And they provide a lot of counseling and case management services for families specifically and children. So lots of resources out there if you need connected to behavioral health services.
Well, and I'll try to put some of these resources on the bottom, and I will put a link to Cherie's website her blog about finding tribes. That'll be an interesting read for parents looking for other ideas. Anything else? Because I think this has been helpful. I think this has been a really nice conversation today. Well, good luck, teachers. You've just begun the year. So I wish you the very best with all of it. And hopefully we'll get another roundtable going soon later on. Thanks a lot for coming and joining the conversation. Bye.
Thanks, Susie.